I had been at my desk for hours, the hum of fluorescent lights pressing on my temples like a vice. The logistics office where I worked wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, barely. Stacks of paperwork surrounded me, glowing monitors displayed shipment schedules, and the steady ring of phones made the air feel heavy. My coworkers walked past with mugs of coffee, offering tired nods, each of us bound by deadlines we couldn't escape. I remember blinking at the screen, my eyes burning, when a wave of dizziness hit me. I gripped the edge of the desk, hoping it would pass, but my vision blurred into white noise. The buzzing in my ears drowned out everything. I pushed myself to stand, telling myself I just needed water, but my knees buckled. The last thing I saw was a coworker's horrified face as I collapsed onto the carpet. Voices blurred around me, someone shouting my name, someone else fumbling for the phone. "Call 911 now!" I heard, though it felt like it came from underwater. I wanted to reassure them I'd be fine, but my lips wouldn't move. My chest tightened. For weeks I had ignored the headaches, the spinning spells, the warning signs. I had convinced myself that pushing through proved strength. But as the world slipped away, one bitter truth carved itself into me. I wasn't strong. I was breaking. The next moments came in flashes, EMTs kneeling over me, a strap across my chest, the high-pitched beep of equipment, my coworkers stepping back, fear in their eyes. Inside the ambulance, the paramedic's voice cut through. "BP's low, pulse irregular. Stay with us, ma'am." I wanted to answer, to tell him my name, but my tongue was heavy. The siren wailed above us, carrying me away from the office that had drained every ounce of me. When I woke again, the light was colder. I was in the ER. The ceiling tiles stretched like endless squares, the monitors beeped in uneven rhythm. Nurses moved quickly, adjusting IV lines, scribbling notes on charts. A nurse with kind eyes leaned closer, brushing hair from my damp forehead. "You're stable for now. We've already called your emergency contact, your father," she said gently, as if those words should comfort me. Relief pricked through me, though mixed with shame. At 32, lying in a hospital bed, I still carried the child's hope that maybe, just maybe, my father would come through this time. Maybe tonight he would put everything aside and simply be my dad. Minutes passed. The nurse returned, holding the phone in her hand, her expression unsettled. She hesitated before speaking. I need to tell you something," she murmured. I searched her face, uneasy. "What did he say?" She swallowed, eyes darting to the floor. "Your father told me, word for word, not my problem. Kick her out." The words clanged in the sterile room, sharper than any machine's alarm. The nurse's fingers trembled, the phone nearly slipping from her grip. I pushed myself upright, IV tugging at my arm. "He said what?" My voice was calm, but beneath it, a storm gathered. The nurse bit her lip. "I'm so sorry. He didn't even ask about your condition. He just repeated it and hung up." For a moment, everything froze. The beeping monitors, the rush of nurses, even the weight of the blanket on my chest. Inside, the fracture widened. There's a saying I once read, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." Tonight, he had shown me in a way I could never deny again. I leaned back against the pillow, closing my eyes. Anger pressed against my ribs, but I didn't let it spill. Tears were useless here. What I felt wasn't shock. It was confirmation. The nurse lingered, guilt shadowing her features. I shouldn't have repeated it like that. I stopped her with a shake of my head. "Don't apologize. He never does." Her silence said more than pity ever could. I replayed the moment in my mind, my father's instant dismissal, not a pause, not a shred of hesitation. A father is supposed to ask about vitals, about survival. Mine had chosen erasure instead. I made a vow, quiet but cutting. If he wants me out, I'll make sure I walk out on my own terms. The machines hummed, the lights buzzed, but inside me, something shifted. Clarity replaced the fragile hope I had clung to for too long. Hours later, I lay alone in the ER bed. The ward had quieted. Only the faint steps of nurses echoed down the hallway. I stared at the blank ceiling, the IV dripping steadily into my vein. A quote drifted back into my thoughts. Sometimes family isn't blood. It's those who show up when it matters. My eyes burned, but not from tears. I knew the truth now. The room filled with the rhythm of machines. Then, suddenly, a vibration at my side. I glanced at the table where my phone buzzed, screen lighting up. The name flashing on it wasn't my father. It was my landlord. I stared at the glowing letters, unease sliding through me. Something worse was waiting. The phone buzzed against the tray table, its glow catching my tired eyes. Still lying in the hospital bed, the IV dripping steadily into my arm, I reached for it with a mix of dread and curiosity. My body was weak, my skin clammy against the hospital gown, but my mind sharpened the second I saw the name on the screen. It wasn't my father. It wasn't even family. It was my landlord. For a moment, I thought he was calling to check on rent, something simple, routine. But as I unlocked the screen, the truth burned brighter than the fluorescent lights overhead. My father had tagged him on a community group post. The message stared back at me in black letters. "She's nothing but drama. Kick her out." My stomach twisted harder than any cramp. My pulse leapt. It wasn't my failing health that made my heart pound this time. It was the public exposure. My father hadn't just refused to show up for me. He had broadcasted my weakness for the neighborhood to see. I whispered into the silence, "Privacy isn't sacred anymore. Family drama is broadcast like reality TV." I scrolled, my thumb trembling as the comments loaded. Some neighbors expressed sympathy. "Poor girl, hope she gets help." Others were cruel, always thought she was a burden on them. Their words sliced deeper than any needle in my arm. The nurse returned to check my vitals, and I turned the screen toward her. She gasped, shaking her head. "Honey, this isn't right. A father shouldn't do this to his child." I let out a hollow laugh. "He's been doing this my whole life, just never online before." Her eyes softened, but she didn't argue. She adjusted the IV and lingered as if wanting to say more. I knew she couldn't fix this, but her silence was a quiet witness. My breath steadied. Humiliation weighed heavy, but anger coiled tight beneath it, cold and sharp. I remembered something a teacher once said. Character is what you do when no one is watching. Integrity is what you do when everyone is. My father had just revealed his integrity to the world, and it was rotten. "They want me erased?" I whispered, gripping the phone. "I'll make sure my story stays visible." The room quieted again after the nurse left. The monitors hummed, the fluorescent light hummed, and I was alone with my thoughts. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to the air. Illness doesn't break you. Betrayal does. I reached for the notebook the nurse had given me earlier. On its blank pages, I began documenting everything. The fainting, the call, the words, the post. Not tears, not pleas, records, dates, times, exact words, receipts. In America, people learn quickly to keep receipts, not just for taxes, but for truth, especially when family turns on you. I knew someday, maybe not tonight, these pages would matter. My pen scratched the paper as my inner voice steadied me. Silence now, so my words later cut like steel. Meanwhile, across town, Landlord Darnell saw the tag appear on his phone. He frowned, leaning back in his chair. He didn't react publicly. He didn't rush to throw me out. Instead, he quietly took screenshots of the post. He remembered me as a quiet, responsible tenant, someone who had never once been late on rent. He knew the world wasn't always what it pretended to be, especially in families. He tucked the evidence away, saying nothing, but already his silence was forming its own defense. Back in the hospital, I didn't know any of this yet. I only knew the landlord hadn't responded, which gave me a flicker of hope. Hours passed. The hospital dimmed for the night. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the shadows cast by the machines. My phone buzzed again. I turned it over, half expecting another stranger's comment. It wasn't the landlord this time. It was my sister's name. The notification preview cut through me like glass. Family night without the drama. A smiling photo appeared beneath it, everyone around the table. I froze. Betrayal layered itself again, deeper, heavier, until even breathing hurt. The hospital room was dim, the glow from the machines flickering against the walls. My phone lit up again, breaking the stillness. I picked it up, expecting another notification from strangers on the community post. Instead, it was from my sister, Narina. The screen showed her latest upload, a family photo captioned, "Family night without the drama." I stared at the smiling faces. Everyone was there. My mother with her hands folded neatly, my father raising a glass of wine, Narina and Elowin leaning close together, their eyes glittering with self-satisfaction. And me? I was missing, not just forgotten, but deliberately cut out. My chest tightened. It wasn't simply that they had skipped visiting me. They were celebrating my absence, immortalizing it with a caption meant to sting. I whispered to the silent room, "It's one thing to be forgotten. It's another to be erased." The nurse came in to check my vitals and saw the screen. "That's your family?" she asked, frowning. "Yes," I said, sliding the phone away. "Do you want me to call them again?" I shook my head. "Don't bother. That picture says enough." She looked at me with pity, but I couldn't bear it. I pressed my lips together until the moment passed. I told myself not to cry. They wanted me broken, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Silence wasn't peace tonight. It was punishment. I zoomed in on the photo, catching details that made it worse. My mother's casserole, the dish she knew I loved most, sat at the center of the table. My father poured himself another glass, his smile wide as if this was the happiest he had been in weeks. Everything about the picture screamed one thing: you don't belong. The phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a post. It was a direct message from Narina. I opened it reluctantly, my pulse racing. "You always bring chaos. Maybe this will teach you." Another line followed almost immediately. "Drama queen." The words blurred before my eyes. I read them again and again, but my face stayed still. My chest ached, but my expression was ice. I took a screenshot and saved it. That was how I reclaimed control, by documenting, not by pleading. It struck me how generational wisdom often carried into situations like this. My grandmother used to say, "Keep your receipts because truth without proof is just noise." Tonight, those words rang in my ears. I set the phone down for a moment, gripping the pen in my other hand. I whispered into the sterile room, "Drama queen. No, survivor." Memories flashed across my mind. Narina mocking me at 16 when I confronted her about a lie. Narina rolling her eyes at me in college, dismissing my concerns with the same insult. Over and over, she had used the phrase to box me in, to make me look foolish so she could shine brighter as the perfect daughter. Labels are dangerous. If you hear them long enough, you either accept them or you redefine them. I wasn't going to let hers define me anymore. I pressed the pen to paper, writing her words down verbatim, marking the time and date. Evidence, again. But this time, my note carried something else. A vow. "They will choke on their own words soon enough," I murmured. The room grew still, except for the hum of the machines. I exhaled slowly, refusing to let bitterness sink deeper. My heart pounded with anger, but also with clarity. I placed the notebook beside me, and as the ink dried, the door handle rattled. Someone was trying to enter my hospital room. My pen froze mid-stroke. For the first time that night, I wasn't sure if I wanted the door to open. The night was long. I tried to close my eyes, but each time I drifted, another vibration on my phone pulled me back. At first I ignored it, thinking it was just more gossip online. But when I finally picked it up, the alert wasn't from neighbors or social media, it was from my bank. The words burned on the screen. "Large withdrawal. Joint payment processed." I frowned, reading it again, trying to make sense of it. A joint payment? My account wasn't tied to anyone, or at least it wasn't supposed to be. I opened the app and scrolled through the details. My breath caught. It was a mortgage payment, thousands of dollars, pulled directly from my account. And there, in black and white, was the proof. My father had linked my name as guarantor. Flat on my back in a hospital gown, IV in my arm, and still he found a way to reach into my pocket. A bitter laugh escaped me. Even here, they managed to drain me. I whispered to myself, they want me broke, but I'll turn their theft into my proof. The nurse walked in to check my blood pressure. She paused when she saw my face, pale and tight with fury. What's wrong? Is it pain again? I handed her the phone. Not the kind you can treat. Look. She scanned the screen, then looked up sharply. This isn't medical stress, is it? No, I said, steady but cold. It's financial abuse, and they think I'm too weak to notice. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't argue. She just shook her head, muttering, Some scars don't come from injuries. A person doesn't need to hit you to leave scars, I replied, my voice firm. Sometimes they just use your name. I saved screenshots, every page, every detail. One by one, I stored them in a hidden folder on my phone. I wasn't collecting memories anymore. I was collecting weapons. Hours later, the room grew quiet. The hallway lights dimmed, footsteps softened. I was trying to rest when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. My mother's name appeared on the screen. For a second, a spark of hope lit inside me. Maybe she had seen what happened. Maybe she wanted to ask if I was okay. I answered and put it on speaker, the nurse still nearby adjusting equipment. Hello? My voice cracked, but I steadied it. On the other end, my mother's tone was clipped, almost annoyed. You should know, she said, pausing as if the words were heavy. You were never part of our plan anyway. The sentence hung in the air. The nurse froze, her hands halting mid-motion. Silence pressed in from every corner of the room. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My mind replayed her words again and again. Never part of our plan. She didn't stumble. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was her truth, sliding out unguarded because she thought I was too weak to argue back. Mom, I said finally, my voice even. Is that really what you want to say to me right now? Her sigh came through the speaker, impatient. Don't twist my words. You've always been so dramatic. The nurse stepped closer, her eyes full of sympathy, but she didn't say a word. I ended the call without another response. My chest was tight, but my face remained calm. Absence had always hurt, but hearing it confirmed that I had never been wanted in the first place burned deeper than any wound. I leaned back and whispered, They want me to feel disposable, but disposable doesn't mean defeated. I wrote her words in my notebook, marking the date and time like I had with every insult, every slight. They thought cruelty could break me. Instead, I was turning their cruelty into evidence. Sometimes the people meant to love you teach you the sharpest lessons about survival, I muttered as the ink bled across the page. My body was exhausted, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I closed my eyes, holding on to the calm that came with clarity. Then, another buzz. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. This time, it wasn't from my parents. It was from my landlord. I stared at the glowing screen, my stomach tightening. I didn't open it. Not yet. I knew the next blow was waiting. The morning crept in with the sound of footsteps echoing outside my hospital room. I turned my head toward the door, the thin blanket still pulled up to my chest. The light under the frame shifted as someone paused, then a soft rustle followed. A nurse entered with an envelope in her hand, her brows knit with unease. This was taped to your door, she said gently, sliding the paper onto my tray table as if it might shatter me. I pulled it closer, my fingers trembling before I even saw the bold letters across the top. Notice to vacate. My breath caught. It wasn't enough that I was lying in a hospital gown, fighting to regain my strength. They had decided to erase me while I was still hooked to machines. The date, the signature, the words, vacate immediately stood out like knives. I gripped the edge of the paper. Sick in bed and already replaced, they weren't waiting for me to recover, they were waiting for me to disappear. The nurse's face hardened. This isn't right. They can't do this while you're hospitalized. They can try, I said quietly, pressing my palm against the paper as if to absorb its venom. And they will. Then fight it, she urged, voice breaking with sympathy. I gave her a faint smile. Legal papers have no heart. but mine's still beating, and that means I'm not finished. I raised my phone, snapping photos of every detail, the dates, the wording, the signature. Evidence, not pain. Each picture clicked like a step towards something bigger than survival. By the next day, I was discharged, though still fragile, my body aching with every step. The hospital bracelet still clung to my wrist as I made my way back to my apartment. I prayed for a corner of peace, maybe a bed that smelled like home, maybe just a space where I could breathe without monitors beeping. But as the cab turned onto my street, I saw it. Chaos. Piled on the sidewalk in front of my building were trash bags and boxes, my belongings. My clothes stuffed haphazardly, a lamp bent at an odd angle, shoes scattered like debris after a storm. The cab stopped, and I sat frozen for a moment. Neighbors walked past, some slowing to glance, others whispering as they passed. A few looked at me with pity, others with the sharp judgment that comes from watching someone else's downfall. It wasn't just eviction, I whispered to myself as I stepped onto the pavement. It was humiliation. They wanted the world to see me stripped bare. I walked closer, my legs shaky, the IV mark still fresh on my arm. My eyes scanned the scene, each detail stabbing deeper. A photo frame lay cracked on the pavement, shards of glass catching the weak morning light. Clothes I had folded neatly before my collapse now lay damp from dew. At the top of one bag, half hidden, was the blanket my grandmother had given me when I was a child. Worn but precious, it had followed me through every move, every struggle. Now it was tossed aside like trash. And my throat tightened. I bent down, touching the edge of the fabric. Inside, I broke. But outwardly, my face was calm, steady, deliberate. I stood tall, whispering, "Objects can be replaced. Dignity cannot. And mine, I will reclaim." I remembered a quote I had once read, words that now burned with new meaning. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. I straightened, ignoring the whispers around me. I began gathering my things with slow precision, one piece at a time, as if each motion was a statement that I wasn't gone yet. As I bent to lift a box, a shadow stretched across me. The air shifted, and I felt the weight of someone watching. I turned my head. Across the street, my father's car idled. The engine hummed low, his figure stiff behind the windshield, eyes fixed on me. He wasn't here to help, wasn't here to apologize. He was here to witness, to watch me either crumble or claw my way back. And in that moment, I realized this was never just about eviction, it was about erasure. He wouldn't leave until I broke, or until I fought back. The morning after seeing my belongings scattered on the sidewalk still lingered like a bruise I couldn't press without wincing. I sat upright in the hospital bed, my body still frail, the plastic wristband cutting against my skin, reminding me I wasn't free of their reach yet. My mind drifted back to the blanket tossed into the dew, to the cracked picture frame, to the sound of my father's car idling across the street as if waiting for me to collapse. Home wasn't just walls. It was supposed to be the place I felt safe, where my memories were held. And now even that had been stripped away. I stared at my phone lying silent beside me. No calls, no texts. Just the quiet hum of online notifications continuing to pile up from people I didn't know, dissecting a story they'd been fed without ever hearing my side. I whispered into the air, "They don't want me to stand. But I'm not broken yet." The curtain swayed as the door cracked open, and I looked up, expecting another nurse. Instead, it was Paloma, my mother's sister. She stepped in with a cautious smile, carrying the weight of someone who had waited too long to show up. "You don't have to face this alone," she said gently, her voice low as though she feared the walls might listen. I narrowed my eyes. Why now? Why after all this time? She pulled a chair closer, folding her hands in her lap. "Because I've been where you are. I know what it feels like to be erased, and I won't let them do it to you." I leaned back, wary, but listening. "They're not your family," she continued. "Not when they treat you like this. Family doesn't watch you suffer and call it drama." Her words lodged in me like an anchor dropped into deep water, holding me steady. I asked softly, "And what can you really do?" Paloma reached into her bag and set a card on my tray. "A lawyer, someone I trust, I'll cover the retainer. And until you're steady on your feet, you'll have a place with me. My home may not be much, but it's safe. I stared at the card, at the certainty in her eyes. Sometimes it only takes one hand to keep you from drowning, I said quietly, almost to myself. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then let me be that hand. I felt the sharpness of despair soften, just a little. Hope didn't erase what they'd done, but it gave me something solid to grasp. By afternoon, the notebook I had been filling with dates and words became more than a diary. With Paloma's encouragement, it transformed into a dossier. Bank withdrawals, eviction notices, screenshots of posts and messages. Evidence, carefully catalogued. As I listed them, I told her, "Blood ties mean nothing if they choke you. Real family fights for you." She nodded, her voice steady. "And this is where the cycle ends. You won't carry it forward. That's how we break it." I felt something stir in me, resilience hardening into resolve. For the first time in days, I wasn't reacting, I was preparing. Later, as I tried to rest, a nurse entered holding a printed sheet. Her face was tense. "This just came through your records. I thought you should see it." I took the paper and scanned it. My medical bill, thousands of dollars, had been forwarded by my father, not to me, but to my landlord. Scribbled at the bottom was a note in his unmistakable hand, "Not my responsibility. Handle her." I froze, bile rising in my throat. Even my healing was being treated as a burden to pass off. The nurse shook her head. "Who does that to their own child?" I clenched the page in my hands. Illness was mine, debt was theirs, but they wanted both in my name. Somewhere across town, I imagined Darnell, my landlord, opening the email and frowning. He didn't reply. He didn't act on it yet. He quietly saved it alongside the screenshots he had already collected. His silence was careful, deliberate, a different kind of witness. I sat in my bed, fire rising inside me. They had taken my home, my savings, even my childhood blanket, and now they wanted my dignity and my health too. But there was a limit, and they had just shown me where it was. I turned to Paloma, who had stayed by my side through the day. "Thank you for being here," I said, my voice firmer now. "But this fight isn't about survival anymore. It's about reclaiming who I am." Her hand covered mine. "Then reclaim it, piece by piece. You've already started." That night, as I prepared to sleep, my phone buzzed once more. This time it wasn't the bank. It wasn't my landlord. It was a live stream notification, the title glaring, "Trying to help our troubled sister." I clicked, and my sister's tear-streaked face filled the screen. The glow from my phone lit the hospital room in uneven pulses. I had thought I'd finally get a moment of stillness, a chance to catch my breath. But then the notification flashed. "Narina is live." Against my better judgment, I tapped. The screen filled with her face, eyes red, mascara running, her voice trembling for the camera. "We love her," she said, choking on her words. "But she keeps bringing so much drama. We just want peace in our home." Comments poured in. "Stay strong, Narina. Prayers for your family. You're so brave for speaking out." I gripped the phone until my knuckles whitened. They weren't just cutting me out. They were rewriting me into a villain. And I couldn't defend myself. Lying in this bed, weak and tethered to machines, my silence became their weapon. Paloma, sitting in the chair beside me, leaned forward. Her eyes were sharp as she whispered, "They're weaponizing sympathy." I kept my voice calm, though inside I boiled. "Let them—" "Every lie leaves a trail." She frowned. "You can't just watch this." "I can," I said, tapping the side of my phone. "Because I'm recording every second." The camera panned on Narina's side. Behind her, Elowen entered the frame, nodding solemnly, playing her part. Elowen clasped her hands as if in prayer, then added, "We just don't know how to help her anymore. She refuses to change. Please, keep us in your thoughts." The comments exploded, waves of digital applause, sympathy, and pity. I whispered, almost to myself, "In America, image is currency." And tonight, my sister just overdrafted her account. Paloma shook her head. They don't even realize how transparent this looks to anyone who knows the truth. I exhaled slowly. To the public, they're the saints. But to me, they're performers, and I won't interrupt their act. I'll let the curtain fall on its own. I began taking screenshots, one after another. The comments, the crying faces, the captions. Every pixel of their deceit would be kept. Later that night, after the live stream ended, my phone rang again. I didn't expect to hear voices, but Narina must have forgotten to mute her phone after signing off. Through the speaker came Elowen's voice, clear as if she stood in the room. Once she's gone, Elowen said, her tone casual. Dad said we can divide her room. I'm taking the desk. Narina laughed softly. Good. I'll take the closet. She won't need any of it. Not where she's going. A pause. Then Elowen again. She'll learn the hard way. Drama has no place here. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just emotional outburst. It was strategy. They weren't acting out of pain. They were plotting, carving my life into pieces before I'd even left the hospital. Paloma's hand clenched on the armrest of her chair. My God, they're planning your erasure. I wrote furiously in my notebook, transcribing every word. It wasn't about peace, I said, my voice flat. It was about profit. Paloma turned to me. What are you going to do? I met her eyes, steady now, sharper than before. I'll make sure I become unforgettable. Her lips pressed into a thin smile. That's the spirit. Don't let them win. The city lights glowed through the hospital window, distant and cold. I stared at them, breathing deeply, letting the weight of betrayal harden into something else. Strength. They wanted silence, I murmured. I'll give it to them, for now. Just as the words left my mouth, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Narina or Elowen. It was an unknown number. The preview glared up at me. Urgent. Legal notice pending. After the live stream ended, silence wrapped itself around the hospital room. Paloma sat in the chair near the window, her gaze steady on me, waiting to see what I would do. I didn't reach for tears. I didn't argue with the screen. I picked up my phone and opened my gallery. Instead of fighting them publicly, I began the slow, deliberate process of gathering proof. Screenshot after screenshot, I documented every insult, every performance they broadcasted, the eviction notice, the bank withdrawals, the message my father had sent the landlord, the live stream comments showering my sisters with sympathy. All of it went into a folder I labeled receipts. I whispered to myself, silence isn't weakness, silence is a ledger, and one day I'll balance it. Paloma leaned forward, her voice low. You're not trembling anymore. I looked at her, my hand still moving across the screen. I'm not shaken. I'm preparing. The hours stretched quietly, my focus unbroken. Each file was a nail, each note a board, building the framework of a case that would one day bury their lies. By evening, I had a folder thick with evidence. I organized it by date, each piece labeled with precision. The years of being dismissed as dramatic had taught me something. They ignored words, but they couldn't ignore proof. Every scar needs a witness, I murmured, and my proof will speak louder than my tears. Paloma's eyes softened, but her jaw was tight. You don't have to do this alone. I shook my head. I've been alone my whole life. This time, I'll make sure they hear me without a word. Her silence was agreement. Memories tugged at me, uninvited. Times I had tried to defend myself at family dinners, only to be laughed at. Times I confronted Narina or Elowen, only to hear, "You're too sensitive. You're imagining things." Every time I had spoken, my voice had been twisted into the problem itself. Now I refused to repeat the mistake of speaking without evidence. The decision formed in my chest like steel. I opened my email and drafted a message addressed to Darnell, my landlord. I wrote simply, without flourish. Attached are documents showing the actions taken against me while I am hospitalized. My father and sisters have publicly attempted to erase me and are using financial and legal manipulation to force me from my home. I will not be erased. I attached everything, the eviction notice, the bank deductions, the screenshots of my father tagging him, the live stream posts. Paloma leaned over to read. Concise, direct, no begging. That's the point, I said. This isn't a cry for help. It's a record. In America, paper trails win wars families try to bury. Her nod was solemn. Good. You're turning the same system they used against you into your weapon. I hovered over the send button for only a moment before pressing it. The screen flashed, the email left my outbox, and with it, the first strike had been made. Across town, Darnell opened his inbox. His brows furrowed as he read, his fingers tapping the mouse slowly. He clicked through every attachment, the eviction notice taped to my hospital door, the transaction draining my account, the cruel post from my father. His expression hardened. Quietly, he saved everything into a folder of his own. He didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. His silence became its own form of preparation. Back in my hospital room, I exhaled a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My chest loosened, but the calm was not weakness. It was the steady calm of someone who had finally taken a step forward. They called me drama, I said softly. Now the documents will show the truth. Paloma offered me a small, fierce smile. Facts don't waver. I nodded. Facts are stubborn things. The words of John Adams floated through me, grounding me in the certainty that no performance, no tearful live stream, no slander could outweigh what was written, dated, and recorded. Exhaustion swept through me then. I leaned back into the thin hospital pillow, the weight of the day pressing heavy but not hopeless. I had planted something tonight, a seed of evidence that would grow in silence until it broke through the ground where lies had been sown. I closed my eyes, letting the machines hum in rhythm with my breath. Then my phone buzzed again. It wasn't the landlord this time. It wasn't Paloma. It wasn't even a name I recognized. The screen showed only 2 words from a blocked number. Watch what happens next. I held the phone in my hand, the glow casting shadows across my face. For the first time, I didn't feel dread. I felt the storm turning in my favor. The call came on a gray afternoon, a few days after I left the hospital. Darnell, my landlord, spoke with the careful tone of a man who'd already decided on something but wanted me to hear it directly. I want everyone in the same room, he said. You, your father, your sisters. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock. My office. I held the phone tightly, my eyes narrowing. They thought I'd be fragile, cornered, easy to silence. They didn't know silence had teeth. Paloma, who had been pouring tea in the kitchen, overheard. You won't go alone, she said firmly. I wasn't planning to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I rehearsed every angle, every piece of proof. They believed I was still the child who wilted under their scorn. Tomorrow, they would learn the cost of underestimating me. When the hour came, Paloma and I walked into the cramped office. Darnell sat behind his desk, papers neatly stacked, his face unreadable. Across from us sat my father, arms folded, and my sisters flanking him like well-trained lieutenants. The air thickened. My father spoke first, his voice booming to fill the small space. This has gone on long enough. She's unstable, always has been. She's ruined us financially. She's dragged our name through the mud. Narina leaned forward, her eyes wet with perfectly timed tears. Dad, please, don't be too harsh. She just needs help. We all love her, but she refuses to see reason. Elowyn chimed in, her voice honeyed with false concern. She's been unpredictable for years. We've done everything we can. At some point, you can't let one person destroy an entire family. The performance was polished, rehearsed. Gaslighting dressed as compassion. I sat silently, letting them build their tower of lies higher and higher. Paloma shifted in her seat, but I touched her hand lightly to steady her. When the room finally quieted, I placed a folder on the table and slid it across. You wanted proof of drama? I said evenly. Here's yours. Inside were bank statements showing withdrawals not authorized by me, screenshots of my father tagging Darnell with the words, "Kick her out," eviction notices taped to my hospital door, and transcripts of messages laced with contempt. Their voices faltered. Narina's tears stopped mid-drop. Elowyn's lips parted, but no words came. My father's jaw clenched. Facts don't scream, I said, my voice calm but cutting. They whisper, and yet they cut louder than lies. Paloma gave a single nod, her presence like a wall behind me. Darnell cleared his throat, reached for a remote, and turned to the screen on the wall. A message appeared, projected in bold black letters, the one my father had sent him, preserved with the timestamp still visible. Kick her out. Handle her. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was crushing. My father's face turned crimson. Narina shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Elowen, whose eyes darted toward the door. Darnell leaned back in his chair. I've rented to many families, he said slowly. But this is abuse. And it ends now. I stood, gathering my papers carefully, not rushed. The truth, I said, my voice steady, is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose, and it will defend itself. They sat frozen, mouths half open, scrambling for excuses they couldn't find. I walked out with Paloma beside me, the weight in my chest replaced by something sharper. Victory. As the sunlight hit my face outside, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. You think you've won. We're just getting started. Leaving Darnell's office, I clutched the folder against my chest. The air outside felt different, lighter somehow, while behind me, my father and sisters remained frozen, their lies shattered under the weight of evidence. The quiet after truth lands, I murmured to Paloma, who walked beside me, is heavier than any scream. She glanced at me, her face calm but proud. You didn't flinch. That silence was yours. I nodded, breathing deeply. But before I could settle into relief, my phone buzzed again and again. Not my family this time, but social notifications, pings from neighbors, acquaintances, even strangers. The world was moving faster than I could. By the time we reached her car, my name was already trending in local feeds. Screenshots of my father's message, kick her out, handle her, and Darnell's projection in the meeting room were everywhere. The dominoes had begun to fall. Within hours, social media ignited like a wildfire. Community threads filled with outrage. Comments spilled over with disbelief, anger, sympathy. No father should ever say this to his child, one wrote. Another, unthinkable. And she was in the hospital? I stared at the screen, the words both validating and overwhelming. Paloma squeezed my shoulder. It's turning. The same people who once believed them now see the truth. I whispered, half to myself. It took a village to destroy my reputation. Now it will take the same village to dismantle theirs. By evening, neighbors who had once smiled politely at my parents began distancing themselves. A man from down the street commented, I've known them for years, but this? Shameful. Reputation is a fragile house, and one truth, once freed, can topple it. The fallout struck quickly. My father's job suspended him by the week's end after HR received multiple emails attaching the viral posts. His position as a supervisor crumbled, the weight of trust gone. Narina's career collapsed faster than anyone expected. Brands she represented as a PR face severed contracts. One issued a statement. We cannot align with individuals who promote false narratives while engaging in abusive family conduct. Her curated online life dissolved overnight. Elowen's small online boutique was next. Customers bombarded her page with angry comments and refund requests. Reviews stacked up. Supporting this family is supporting cruelty. The bright pastel images of her products couldn't drown out the flood. I scrolled through the news, not smiling, not celebrating, but steady. They called me drama, I told Paloma. But this was their performance unraveling. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I recognized, though it had been years. I can't believe they did that to you. I always knew something was off. It was Julia, a friend from high school I hadn't spoken to in more than a decade. I hesitated, then replied, You saw? Her response came quickly. Everyone has. But I remember even back then, you were treated differently. You deserved better then. You deserve better now. Tears pricked my eyes, but not from pain, from validation. The confirmation of a truth I had carried silently since adolescence. I typed back, "And now, finally, I'll take it." We talked for a while. About old classes, forgotten teachers, small-town gossip. But beneath it all, the thread was clear. Someone from my past, outside the mess, saw me and believed me. The weight of invisibility, carried so long, began to shift. By midnight, the story was everywhere. Articles online, neighborhood pages aflame, phone calls buzzing through Paloma's line from people who once looked the other way. I felt stronger, vindicated. But I also knew one thing. Wars never end with the first victory. My phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a call from a legal firm. I answered slowly, pressing the phone to my ear. The lawyer's cold voice crackled down the line. "We're representing your family in a petition. They're filing for guardianship." The lawyer's office smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the kind of place where battles weren't fought with fists, but with signatures and evidence. I sat across from Paloma, the leather chair creaking as I shifted. The lawyer, a gray-haired man named Mr. Whitaker, placed a file on the desk between us. "They've filed a guardianship petition," he said, his tone calm but direct. "They're arguing you're unstable, unfit to manage your own finances. If a judge agrees, your father, or whoever they appoint, would control your accounts, your assets, even medical decisions." My throat tightened. They wanted to erase me with paperwork, the same way they erased me from the dinner table. Paloma's jaw tightened. "This is abuse, plain and simple." Mr. Whitaker nodded. "Unfortunately, families use this tactic more often than you'd think. But judges also recognize patterns. What we need to do is show yours." I exhaled slowly, the sting of betrayal hitting sharp, but resolve rising beneath it. I had already lost my home, my belongings, and the illusion of love from my parents. I wasn't about to surrender my freedom, too. "I'll fight," I said firmly. "Every inch of this, I'll fight." The next step was immediate. Paloma reached into her purse and pulled out her checkbook. Without hesitation, she scribbled out a retainer fee and slid it across the desk. "Family isn't about blood," she said softly, looking at me. "It's about who shows up, and I'm here." "Paloma," I started, guilt and gratitude tangling in my throat. She shook her head. "Don't argue. This is my choice. Sometimes all it takes is one ally to tip the balance." Her quiet act struck me harder than any blow my family had dealt. The contrast was staggering. They stripped me, and she shielded me. I placed my hand over hers. "You didn't have to?" "But I'll never forget that you did." She squeezed back, her eyes steady. "Then prove them wrong. Not just for you. For anyone who's been silenced like this." Whitaker cleared his throat, opening the folder. "Your evidence will carry weight. You've documented everything. Eviction notice, bank withdrawals, texts, live stream clips. We'll present it all. Judges see through manipulation when the paper trail tells another story." I flipped through the pages with him, each document a piece of my survival turned into ammunition. My father's words, my sister's staged videos, the bank draining my account while I lay in a hospital bed. Relief mixed with bitterness. Justice wasn't kindness, but at least it was truth. Whitaker leaned back. "Don't worry, this petition is already crumbling. You're stronger than they realized." I left the office with Paloma beside me. For the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. Back at her home in Dayton, I curled into the guest bed, the soft quilt smelling faintly of lavender. The quiet was different here. It didn't suffocate, it soothed. "They tried to own me with debt and shame," I whispered into the dark. "But I am not theirs anymore." Paloma's voice came from the doorway. "Breaking free doesn't mean hatred, Tatiana. It means choosing peace over poison." I looked at her, eyes heavy but clear. "Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting that some people aren't meant to stay." She nodded slowly. "Exactly. And when you embrace that, you finally breathe." For the first time, I allowed myself to rest. Not the restless sleep of hospital beds or the tense silence of humiliation, but real rest. Hours later, I woke and reached for my phone. Another notification was climbing through the feeds. I opened it, and Narina's face filled the screen again, red-eyed, dramatic, her voice cracking with rehearsed grief. "She's tearing this family apart," she cried, staring straight into the camera. "We don't know how much more we can take." I stared at her, then closed the phone slowly. "No," I whispered into the quiet room. "I'm setting it free." The courthouse hallway smelled faintly of polished wood and old dust, a place where people came not for peace, but for verdicts. My family stood clustered near the benches, their lawyer beside them, papers clutched tightly like weapons. My father's eyes locked on me, sharp and unyielding. Narina and Elowen clung to his side, their faces painted with concern, but their eyes were hard, rehearsed. My mother lingered behind them, her silence the same as it had been my entire life, an accomplice by omission. I walked with Paloma beside me, her quiet strength anchoring me as we entered. My own lawyer, Mr. Whitaker, carried my folder, thick with documents. My father was the first to break the silence. "We just want to talk things through," he said, his voice smooth but dangerous. "It doesn't have to be this way." I met his stare. They weren't here for peace. They were here for control. And I was done giving it. Narina added quickly, "Tatiana, please, think about how this looks." "You're tearing the family apart!" Elowen chimed in. "We're only trying to protect you. If you keep pushing us away, you'll regret it." Their words were guilt disguised as care, poison dressed as medicine. I stood tall, my voice steady. "You're not here to protect me. You're here to bind me." My father leaned forward, his jaw clenched. "You'll regret this when everything falls apart." I reached into my bag and pulled out a notarized document, sliding it across the table to their lawyer. "The only thing falling apart is your illusion of control," I said. The paper was clear. Termination of all financial ties, no contact legally enforced, every shared obligation severed. They froze, stunned into silence. Narina's lips parted, but no sound came. Elowen blinked rapidly, panic breaking through her mask. My father's face burned red as his lawyer skimmed the pages, his authority stripped by ink. "Revenge isn't screaming back," I said quietly, each word cutting deeper than if I'd raised my voice. "Revenge is walking away so completely that you choke on the silence." For a moment, the only sound was the shuffle of papers. Then I added, "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all." I turned and left, Paloma following close behind, leaving them trapped in the echo of their own stillness. Days later, I stood in the leasing office of a new apartment complex in Columbus. The walls were freshly painted, the smell of clean wood and possibility filling the air. Darnell handed me a set of keys, his expression kind but professional. "This lease is yours alone," he said. "No one else can touch it." I took the pen, signing my name slowly, savoring each stroke. "This signature isn't ink," I whispered to myself. "It's freedom." When the papers were complete, he handed me the keys. For the first time in my life, I held a place that was fully mine, unchained from anyone else's grasp. I walked into the apartment carrying a single box. Inside were only essentials, a change of clothes, my notebook of evidence, and the blanket I had rescued from the sidewalk. I set it gently on the couch. As I unpacked, I thought, family tried to make me a ghost, but I built my own walls, my own roof, my own peace. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, the hum of the city faint outside, and said aloud, "Peace is better than being loved by people who only love you when you're useful." The words settled around me like armor. That night, I sat by the window, the lights of Columbus glowing against the dark. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm, untethered. My phone buzzed on the table. The number was blocked. I picked it up, smirked, and set it face down without answering. "I don't need to win their war," I whispered. "I already built my peace."